Let me introduce Peter. Peter Vanacker. Peter has been a serial CEO of CABB, Trade Fund, but especially very important before being the CEO of LyondellBasell, being the CEO and chair of Neste, a true innovator in the biofuels arena. We would love to hear from you. You also play very important roles in the industry. You're chair of the advisory board of the European Institute for Industrial Leadership. You're a member of Synrise board. Peter, we're very excited to have you. Please come forward.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, honored guests. I'm very delighted to be with you. And as said already by Karen, and thank you, Karen, for addressing, the partnership that we have in Houston. Looking forward to discuss that also more during the panel discussion. But also very pleased, to be here in Riyadh. Not the first time, but for me the first time to be at the GPCA. And I must say I'm really impressed by the organization, really impressed also by the vibrant spirit that we have here. Very important, as Karen also rightfully explained, we are at the verge of changing our industry. Of course, I would also like to thank the GPCA Secretary General Al Sadoun and his team for organizing this beautiful event. So, let me talk about gatherings like this. Gatherings like this are so important, for our industry, because they are helping to create a better future for our industry. We are at an inflection point, and many of the converging factors that are unleashing unprecedented opportunities, the race to decarbonize our industry is well underway, and so is the global drive to create a circular economy for plastics. Circularity and waste management is where I would like to begin our discussion today. And please bear in mind, of course, we are a US company. This presentation contains forward-looking statements that require cautionary guidance, and you may, of course, also read them through our website at lyondellbasell.com. Now, back to our presentation. It seems only right to start this talk by discussing circularity, since the first round of UN negotiations towards a plastics treaty just took place in Uruguay. We're working very hard to advocate for a global, balanced instrument across 5 key areas. The first one is boosting supply and demand of recycled products to create a circular economy for plastics. The second one is creating universal access to waste collection to increase the supply of recycled plastics, and that is including with financing from public-private partnerships. The third one is accelerating the development of end markets for recycled plastics. And fourth, establishing design principles for packaging to increase the demand of recyclable materials. And last but not least, fifth, formulating transparent standards on plastic additives used in packaging. Now, with the amount of capital that is needed to realize this vision, regulatory certainty will be critical. And only a stable policy environment will accelerate the necessary investments, close gaps between supply and demand for recycled plastics, and in addition to enabling recycling innovations focused on technologies with the best environmental footprint. We need solutions-oriented policies that are focused on opportunity and value creation. And this is especially true for the world's developing regions, whose needs for infrastructure improvements call for unprecedented investments and bold ideas to ramp up circularity efforts. Now, concurrently, we must be more specific as an industry on recycled content targets. while recognizing meeting them requires cross-sector collaboration and solutions-oriented policies. We must rise to the challenge. We must embrace it as an opportunity and build off the progress that we have already made. We are an industry of innovators, and that continues to design products and materials with better circular properties, from higher recyclability to greater ease of reuse. While there is always room for improvement, already our solutions are not just life-enhancing, but also extremely efficient, as several studies are showing. Now consider this. Independent studies found substituting plastic bottles with glass would generate emissions that are equivalent to 22 coal power plants. Also, research shows most alternatives to plastics in consumer goods applications, from glass to paper to aluminum, they carry fourfold the environmental cost. Now, it's examples like these, they reaffirm the value proposition of our products and the important role they play on the path to net zero greenhouse gas emissions. Additionally, polymers made with feedstock derived from mechanical and advanced recycling, as well as renewable sources, they offer a more sustainable alternative to fossil-based polymers. But greater material circularity alone cannot solve global waste mismanagement challenges. This is a crucial factor proponents of product bans and deselection measures should consider. In addition to investments in circularity, we need effective waste collection and sorting systems for plastics, and we need educated consumers to do their part. Effective design of waste management systems is more than possible. This is something that already exists, for example, in other materials like cardboard. Did you know in the United States alone, the US Environmental Protection Agency estimated nearly 67% of all cardboard that is used domestically in 2018 underwent proper recycling. We are nowhere near those recycling rates for plastics, but we can get there. Between our willingness to invest and the work underway to create better value chain integration, it is not a question of if, but it is a question of when. Now, meanwhile, let us not forget that we must remain diligent in our efforts to control and reduce the loss of pallets from our operations and the supply chain. It is critical we help ensure everyone along the industry value chain acts responsibly with rigorous standards. But better product design and stewardship, coupled with proper waste management practices, will still not be enough to realize a circular economy for plastics. We need, as Karen also said, advanced recycling. Advanced recycling is a promising manufacturing technology which can help recapture hydrocarbon molecules that are already out there in the form of difficult-to-recycle plastics. Plastics made of advanced recycling carry the same specifications of those produced with fossil fuels. And not only does advanced recycling deliver circularity benefits, but as a manufacturing process, it can also carry lower greenhouse gas emissions compared to other manufacturing activities. The Consumer Goods Forum recently published a life cycle assessment including as much. It found pyrolysis-based advanced recycling reduces greenhouse gas emissions by 43% relative to waste-to-energy incineration of plastic films that are made from virgin resources. Another study found air emissions from an average-sized pyrolysis-based advanced recycling site were often on par with those from non-emission intensive structures like hospitals. Across our industry, companies are taking notice of the promise behind advanced recycling and the investments are rising. Also, the Consumer Goods Forum has called for more access to advanced recycling plastics to the tune of 800,000 tons per year, and that by 2030 already. This is a convincing market indicator considering the group's members have combined sales of more than $4.5 trillion US, and they directly employ more than 10 million people. But investments alone will not be enough until we see public sector backing across the regions. Let me repeat, we need consistent policies, we need consistent regulations, and that across world regions. US policy making at the federal level is in early stages on advanced recycling, while discussions in Europe and in the UN are further along. On the UN side, let me reiterate our company's support for a global plastics treaty. We are optimistic about what it could look like and how it could bring the world together to implement effective solutions. In this context, I am absolutely convinced one of the keys of any successful policy proposal will be creating a favorable environment for advanced recycling. But those that do not support it are lobbying governments to treat this manufacturing process as waste incineration, which it is not. Incineration requires oxygen to trigger combustion. And advanced recycling processes, like pyrolysis, use heat to return plastics back to basic hydrocarbon materials. In the near total lack of oxygen, no combustion occurs. And even though we have convincing scientific evidence on our side, we should not assume it will be enough to change some hearts and minds. Rather, we must recognize and embrace the need to educate policymakers, educate the regulators, educate the public about advanced recycling. If we stay engaged, we can help assure the best policy outcomes. It's also important to be very public about the fact we are on the cusp of creating a market for advanced recycling. Most of the technologies out there are still in their infancy, and they will take time to mature and become scalable. It will be interesting to see where we will be in a few years from now as the investments are ramping up. And like many of you, we at LyondellBasell continue to formulate and implement solutions in the interim. Solutions which have the potential to scale and realize the full promise behind advanced recycling. We have a goal of producing and marketing 2 million metric tons of polymers from recycled or renewable-based resources annually, and that by 2030. And let me put this a bit into context. About half a car is made of plastic, which means 2 million metric tons of polymers could help manufacture about 10 million vehicles every year. As we work towards our goal, we launched this fall a circular and low-carbon solution strategic business unit to speed up the activities in this area. And by mid-November, we also announced plans to move forward with the engineering phase to build an advanced recycling plant at our Wesseling site in Germany, and that will use our MoReTec proprietary technology. These moves reaffirm our belief demand for circular polymers is here to stay, no matter where you look in the value chain. As we approach our Q&A portion of today's session, I want to reiterate the guiding principles behind our approach to these macro trends at LyondellBasell. We also believe, just like Karen said, in being technology agnostic. Access to circular feedstock and the technology behind it is still under development. And we are doing our part to accelerate its growth. Governments are looking at various policies, and the need to be thoughtful to develop end markets has never been greater. Our customers and the value chain have made it clear they want more circular materials available soonest. On decarbonization, many of the technologies we are looking at, from blue and green hydrogen to electrification, to name a few, still require more development and investment. The pace of progress on this front cannot come at the expense of value creation. Make no mistake, the unintended consequences of business and policy decisions detached from sound science and pragmatic considerations will not just affect businesses, but society overall. And in the end, I'm a stubborn optimist, and I believe the industry and society will find the right compromises and establish a pragmatic path forward. This will very much be the challenge of our lifetime. But it is up to us to embrace it and to consider it an opportunity. Now, collectively, I believe we are up to the task. Thank you very much for having me.